So there are five mistakes that most likely stunting your growth as a digital artist. Number one is you're over relying on the Zoom. Hey guys, you're welcome back. I'm 4ID. I'm a digital artist and a visual designer. And today we're going to be talking about the five definite mistakes that you're likely making as a digital artist. This is something that is stunting your growth and probably keeping you from making as realistic designs as possible. So number one is over relying on the undo option or the Ctrl Z addiction if you use the Photoshop or any PC. And I understand that this can be an issue. It's very hard for you to feel confident in every single stroke that you make, and sometimes it's easy because of you're using a digital art. It's almost like an eraser or an easier eraser because you're painting and you can easily just go back on whatever you do or something. But at the same time, the more dedicated you are to a particular stroke or to a particular brushstroke or to a particular concept or an idea, the more flow that you have. So most times when you use the undo option, it kind of disrupts your flow. You really want to get into that flow, so you really want to be able to make something, make a stroke, and then just continue. Just dedicate yourself to that particular stroke. And then at the end of the day, you realize that sometimes what they say, every mistake is a design. I don't really believe every mistake is a design, but at the same time, sometimes your mistake can lead you to a breakthrough that can make that change. So it's very important for you to always dedicate yourself to a particular design or a particular concept, even though you feel not so perfect or you don't feel it's very perfect. So that's one. And number two is zooming in too much. So this zooming in too much or misusing the zoom in option, because most times I think zooming in too little can be an issue. If you're zooming in too little, you find out that most of your brush strokes are overly blended or they don't really have that definition to them because you haven't like given it enough detail inside. But then there's a counter issue where it's like you're zooming in too much and you forget that there's supposed to be a balance. Maybe you over detail one spot and you spend like 20 minutes making an eyelash, but you don't focus on the whole picture. So most times it's very important for you to zoom in and then remember to zoom out. Zoom in and always remember to zoom out. So that's one problem that we have with the zoom in option. Number two problem that you can get with the zoom in option is the fact that sometimes you can miss out on your illusion of depth. When you're painting traditionally, it's very easy for you to understand that whatever is in your foreground will have more detail than what's in your background. But then when you're painting digitally and you have the access to just zoom in and get into every single pixel, you kind of lose that illusion of depth because your background can get very detailed, overly detailed to the point where you can't really see a difference between that and the foreground. So you have to understand that sometimes you put more detail in the foreground and you forget the background. Another thing is the fact that you're just spending too much time in one spot. So sometimes it's easy for you to just keep going, keep going, keep going, and then you get to a point where you understand an artwork. Zoom in, zoom out. Always keep that balance, zooming in and zooming out. So number three problem is ignoring traditional fundamentals. So this can be a very crucial issue in the sense that most times people feel like just because you're getting into digital art and most of the effects are easy to use, you're not really thinking about what tools to use. You don't really have to mix too many colors, you don't have to create a palette, you just have everything in store for you. You forget that you still have to go back and learn the fundamentals, the elements of design, the principles, the anatomy, the shades, the lights, the you have to learn all those things almost like it's maths, because at the end of the day when you start off as a painter, most of these things are experiences that you would have to have in person, but at the same time you still need to learn them, because if you don't learn them, it's like where are you going and where are you coming from? You can't really see a growth in your design and you're making mistakes that you should have already passed at some point, which is why sometimes you can see somebody making digital art and it's either smudgy or flat or the anatomy is wonky or there's no proportion or there's no composition, and all the simple things that you feel like are not very important can be very important, especially when it comes to digital art, because that's something that is so easy that people can notice when you do it wrongly. So that's another thing. Number four thing is overusing layers, not naming or organizing your layers. So this problem can be a very big issue because most times when you get access to breaking down your works into so many layers, you can end up having like 21 layers on your, that's if you're using maybe Photoshop or you're using a PC. Then if you're using Procreate that I use, you can have like as many layers as your pixel can accept. And that's something that can be a very huge freedom for you, because you feel like, yo, I can change the color of this sky at any time. I don't really have to commit myself to any of these designs, because I can always change it. I can always change the color of this clothes. I can always change it. And that was something I had to learn the hard way. Sometimes you have to limit yourself in order to understand the full access that you have, and that limiting yourself to one spot can give you even more options than not limiting yourself, because then now that you're committed to one design, or you're committed to one idea that you have, and you make it harder for you to change those ideas, it can be very liberating, because then you spend more time thinking about how to make this idea that you've already committed yourself to more realistic or more beautiful. It's more important for you to understand that when you're making something, just because you have an access to a plethora of effects or everything, doesn't mean you necessarily have to use it. And number two, in that same conversation, is when you're using too many layers. Let's say you're doing a comic and design, or you actually need to use many layers, maybe it's an illustration or something. Not naming your layers can be an issue, and this is something I fall for a lot. So me advising you is also me advising myself in this case. You always have to name your layer, because it makes it easier for you to do your work. But basically, I'm using Procreate, so I can tell what layer is there just by looking at it. So I don't necessarily have to name all the layers, but it can be a good idea to name all your layers. So number five, and not the least, I'm happy you guys stayed here. And before I say that, I would like to say, if you're watching here, please subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment, just for the algorithm to be able to show this to more people. And thank you for watching up to this point. So number five issue is overusing your brushes and effects. So this is something I said before. When you have a huge option of, okay, you can change this, you can do this, you can do this, and this gives you a large list of brushes, you have so many options. Sometimes this can be overwhelming, and this can be to the detriment of your painting. So sometimes it's very important for you to limit yourself to some of the brushes that you already know, that you already understand, using some grass effect that makes life easy or makes your painting easy, and relying on them can be an issue for you. Effects can make your work look plastic, or it can make it look a bit flat. Sometimes using something like the blurry effects, or using something like the star effects or something, most of all these things can work against you when it comes to digital art. So it's very important for you to work smartly and make sure that whatever design you're making is your goal. That's another thing. When you're relying on most of these fancy brushes, it's almost like what I said in number three, where you don't understand the fundamentals, but you're just going in and using most of these fancy brushes that you don't really understand. So it's very important for you to understand these brushes, work with them slowly and steadily before you get to and have like 3 4 brushes that you use most of the time regularly. Sometimes it can even just be one brush, but 3 4 brushes that you use regularly. Maybe like an artistic brush where it has texture to it, maybe a softer brush that doesn't really have texture. Then you can have something like an ink brush that makes your lines defined if you're into like line drawings. And you can also have a light brush or something, or an airbrush or whatever. But basically you just have a little amount of brushes that you use, kind of the same way you have little amount of brush strokes that you can use in a traditional painting. So the biggest idea is, especially for digital painters, not just illustrators or comic artists, when you're making a digital painting, you want to make it feel like it has a depth to it. You want to make it feel like there's texture to it. You want to make it feel like a normal traditional painting. So when it's printed, people can see it and feel like, oh, is that a traditional painting? Is that digital? What is this? You always want to have that effect on people. So when you're making all of these things, make sure that your brushstroke has the same type of effects as your traditional painting brushstrokes. And when you're doing them, limit yourself, because the traditional artwork is limited. Try as much as possible to limit yourself, understand the fundamentals, and then you can go on. So guys, let me know which one of these mistakes you have probably made in your digital art journey. How did you fix them? And if you haven't, you can let me know, and I can give you some more tips to fix them or correct them in the future. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and also share this channel to other people. Thank you very much for listening, and I remain 4ID.